The Galactic officers had gathered inside the control hall of the starship Idris. Blue light from holographic screens painted their faces while the air hummed with quiet judgment. They were waiting for the human girl from the so-called Mad Planet. Rumors had already spread. Earth bred chaos. Its people acted without logic, and its creatures knew no fear. When the doors opened, silence fell. A young girl walked in wearing a simple blue uniform that looked too small for war but too steady for weakness. Her braid hung over one shoulder, and behind her padded a small creature with black and white fur and bright, unblinking eyes. The aliens frowned. That tiny beast was her guardian? Her weapon? Commander Vekroth, whose claws could tear steel, leaned forward. "Is this your fighter, human?" He hissed. She didn't answer. The girl simply placed a hand on the honey badger's back, and the animal stood taller, its muscles tightening, teeth slightly bared. Something about it made even the soldiers step back. In the next moment, alarms exploded across the deck. The ship shuddered as enemy fire struck from orbit. The alien officers panicked, shouting orders. The girl didn't move. She whispered something to the badger, soft, calm, and human. Then, like a spark in a storm, it ran. No one saw it move, only the results: sparks, metal tearing, screams from intruders who had boarded the lower deck. Security cameras flickered as shadows flashed across the halls. The little creature tore through armored invaders twice its size, moving faster than the eye could follow. The aliens watching the feed went pale. One of them muttered, "It's impossible! That thing's insane!" The girl turned to them. "No," she said quietly. "It's loyal." Outside the ship, explosions rattled the hull. The enemy fleet had underestimated the humans. Again. But this time, the galaxy would learn what Earth truly bred. Not madness, but survival without mercy. As the honey badger returned, streaked with ash and sparks glinting off its fur, even the commander lowered his eyes. The humans hadn't come to beg for peace. They'd come to show what insanity really meant. The corridors of the Idris smelled of smoke and ozone. Metal hissed where plasma bolts had melted the walls. The alarms had stopped, but the silence that followed was worse. Every alien officer kept glancing at the small creature that now sat calmly beside the human girl, licking a burn on its paw as if nothing had happened. Commander Vekroth watched the girl carefully. "You trained that thing?" he asked, his voice shaking. She looked at him. "No, I just trust him." That answer unsettled the crew more than the fight itself. Trust? Between a human and a beast? The galaxy's greatest soldiers used control collars, shock whips, and fear to command their animals. Yet this tiny human had walked through fire with nothing but a whisper and loyalty. Vekroth gestured to the holoscreen. "Your creature destroyed 3 boarding parties. It disabled our own drones and took control of their targeting systems." "How?" The girl didn't respond. She knelt beside the honey badger and checked its injuries. "He doesn't fight because I tell him to," she said softly. "He fights because someone hurt his home." Those words spread through the crew like fire. They remembered how Earth was mocked. The lunatic world. The planet that refused to join any alliance. But this girl wasn't here to join anything. She was here because war had already reached her skies. Suddenly the ship's comms burst alive again. The enemy fleet had regrouped. A deep alien voice growled over the channel. "Return the human and her monster, or your ship dies next." The entire command room froze. Vekroth looked at the girl. "What did you do?" She rose slowly, her eyes reflecting the flickering lights. "I didn't start this, they did. And now they'll see why they call us insane." The honey badger growled low, a sound so deep it vibrated through the metal floor. Around them, the ship's crew, creatures from 10 different worlds, felt something they couldn't name. Not fear, not respect. Something sharper. For the first time, they believed the stories. Earth wasn't mad. Earth was dangerous. The girl stepped toward the main viewport. Outside, a dozen enemy warships aimed their cannons. She touched the glass and smiled slightly, the honey badger standing like her shadow. "Let's end this," she whispered. The enemy ships moved closer, their weapons glowing like suns. Each pulse of light painted the bridge of the Idris in red. Alien officers scrambled, trying to power shields and weapons. The human girl stood at the center of the chaos, still calm, her hand resting on the honey badger's head. "Commander," said one of the lieutenants, voice shaking. "We can't hold this line. They outnumber us 10-1. Vecrath turned to the girl. "You said your world is mad. Then prove it. What do we do?" She looked at the holomap. The enemy fleet surrounded them like a metal storm. Her eyes followed the orbit lines, her brain working quietly. "You fight like soldiers," she said, "but you need to think like hunters." The commander frowned. "Hunters?" She pointed at the badger. "He doesn't fight for victory. He fights for survival. You want to live? Stop following rules," the honey badger growled as if agreeing. The girl stepped forward, typing coordinates into the ship's manual override system. "Pull us closer to the asteroid belt. They'll chase us. They always do." Moments later, the Idris engines roared. The ship spun toward the glowing belt of rock and ice. Alarms screamed as asteroids scraped against the hull, but the human didn't flinch. Her plan was clear now. Pure madness. "Open the lower hangar," she ordered. Vecrath hesitated. "That will vent half the ship." She looked at him coldly. "Do it," he obeyed. The hangar doors opened, and a storm of loose metal containers burst into space. The debris scattered across the asteroid field, confusing the enemy's sensors. Then, hidden among the chaos, something small launched, a single pod carrying the honey badger. "Wait! What did you just do?" a pilot shouted. The girl didn't answer. Her eyes followed the pod on the screen. The honey badger had one mission. The pod latched onto an enemy ship. Moments later, their scanners went blind. On every enemy vessel, lights flickered. Systems crashed. Panic spread. The badger was inside their main command ship, tearing through wires, engines, and soldiers like a living storm, the girl whispered. "Show them what madness really looks like." Explosions bloomed across the black sky. One by one, enemy ships tore apart from within, their own systems turning against them. The honey badger was invisible in the chaos, a shadow of fury. On the Idris, silence returned. The crew watched the fire spread through space, unable to believe what they were seeing. The human girl finally turned to Vecrath. "Now you understand," she said softly. "Insanity doesn't mean chaos. It means doing what no one else dares." The commander stared at her. "What are you?" She smiled faintly. "Earth's ambassador." The wreckage drifted in silence. Thousands of tons of enemy metal floated through the dark like broken stars. The Idris had survived, barely. Its hull was scarred, its engines smoked. But it was alive, because of one small creature and one human who refused to listen to reason. Commander Vecrath stood before the girl as she cleaned a streak of oil from the honey badger's fur. Around them, alien officers watched her like she was something between a savior and a nightmare. "You destroyed half a fleet," Vecrath said quietly. "One animal, one girl. No army in the galaxy could do that." The girl didn't look up. "He's not an animal. He's my partner." The commander tilted his head. "Your planet must truly be insane," she smiled faintly. "That's what they said." A message came through the main screen. The Galactic Council demanded her presence. Every leader wanted answers. They called her a danger, a criminal, and possibly a weapon. She didn't argue. She simply nodded. "Set a course," she said. "It's time they saw what Earth really is." As the Idris entered warp space, the crew whispered about her. Some said she was bred in secret military labs. Others claimed she wasn't human at all. But when she walked through the corridors, everyone fell silent. There was something in her eyes, not rage, not madness, just purpose. Hours later, they arrived at the massive council station. It hung like a metal moon, guarded by fleets from 100 species. The landing bay was full of armed soldiers waiting for her. The girl stepped forward with the honey badger beside her. The moment their boots touched the station floor, a low growl rolled through the air. The guards shifted uneasily, hands on their weapons. "Identify yourself," barked an officer. The girl raised her chin. "I'm from Earth. You called us insane." "I came to prove you right." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer sneered. "You think that beast frightens us?" The honey badger took one step forward, baring its teeth. The metal beneath its claws scratched. Every creature in the bay froze. The human didn't move. She didn't need to. The message was already delivered. Commander Veckrath whispered to his aide, "She's not here to fight. She's here to teach them fear." And for the first time in the Council's long history, no one dared to stop a human at the door. The Galactic Council chamber was a cathedral of power. Its ceiling shimmered with stars, its walls carved with the symbols of 1,000 worlds. Every representative sat in their circle, staring down at the human girl standing in the center platform. Beside her, the honey badger stood like a shadow of defiance. The High Chancellor, a towering insectoid with glassy wings, spoke first. "You come from a world we have long avoided. Your species is unpredictable. Your planet breeds chaos. And yet, you destroyed an entire fleet. Why?" The girl's voice was calm. "Because they came to our world first. They thought we'd kneel. We don't." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A reptilian senator hissed, "You unleashed a monster on living beings. That is a war crime!" She turned to him, her face unreadable. "You call it a monster. I call it family." The honey badger growled softly, and its eyes caught the light like molten gold. The aliens shifted in their seats, unsettled by how human and beast moved together, like one mind. "Earth was not meant for your council," she continued. "You wanted to control it, but you can't rule what doesn't fear you. Every human carries a bit of madness. It's what keeps us alive." The insectoid chancellor leaned forward. "So this is your warning?" The girl met his eyes. "No, this is your second chance." Before anyone could speak, the honey badger's ears flicked. It sensed something. The lights dimmed. A tremor ran through the station. Security alarms screamed. A transmission flashed across the hollow screen. The enemy fleet had returned, bigger, faster, and they were heading straight for the council. Panic broke the room. Guards shouted. Commanders tried to restore order. The girl looked up at the ceiling filled with stars and sighed softly. "They never learn." The Chancellor turned to her. "If this is your doing, it isn't," she interrupted. "But it's my problem now." She looked at her companion. The honey badger's fur rose slightly, and it growled in a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. The girl smiled. "Come on, partner. Let's show them why they should have listened." She turned toward the docking bay as chaos erupted behind her. None of the soldiers tried to stop her this time. Even the council guards stepped aside. Somewhere deep down, they knew this wasn't just a human and an animal. This was survival walking. The docking bay trembled as the alarms wailed through the station. From the giant viewport, everyone saw it. The enemy fleet, spreading across the void like a metal storm. Dozens of warships, hundreds of guns, all aimed at the Galactic Council. The girl stood at the edge of the hangar, wind from the pressurized gates lifting her hair. The honey badger sat beside her, staring into the endless black as if it understood every sound in the stars. Commander Veckrath ran up behind her. "You can't face them alone!" She turned slightly. "I'm not alone." He followed her gaze. The small creature at her feet bared its teeth, and for the briefest moment, its reflection in the glass looked far larger, like something ancient, unstoppable. "Open the hangar," she said. Veckrath hesitated. "If you go out there, you'll die." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. But if I don't, all of you will." The bay doors opened, flooding the chamber with blinding light. The girl stepped forward, and her voice carried across the intercoms. "To every species watching this, you said Earth was insane. You were right. Because we fight for what we love, even when it's hopeless." Her ship launched, a small fighter cutting through the void like a spark in darkness. The honey badger crouched behind her seat, its claws digging into the metal as they accelerated toward the center of the enemy fleet. The invaders opened fire. Blinding beams of plasma streaked through space, but the girl's movements were pure instinct, madness refined by survival. The honey badger leapt onto the controls, slamming its paw onto a red switch. Dozens of mines deployed from the fighter's hull, scattering through the enemy formation. The silence that followed lasted only a breath. Then came the light. Explosions rippled outward, each one blooming like a second sun. Enemy ships shattered, their hulls twisting into fragments that burned against the void. The Council's sensors overloaded, blinded by the brilliance. When the light faded, nothing moved. Only drifting debris, glowing like dying embers. The girl's ship reappeared, limping, smoke trailing from its engines. She managed to dock back at the station. The hangar doors opened to the wrecked fighter, and the honey badger jumped out first, covered in soot but unhurt. It shook itself off, then growled softly. The girl followed, blood on her face but smiling. "Told you," she whispered. Insanity saves lives. The Galactic Council members stared in silence. Even the Chancellor lowered his head. "Earth," he said, voice trembling, "is not insane. It's unstoppable." She crouched beside her companion, scratching its head gently. "We just don't quit." The honey badger made a low, satisfied sound. Outside the window, the battlefield still glowed, silent, empty, conquered. And somewhere in that silence, the galaxy finally understood what it meant to call a human crazy. It meant they'd never stop fighting, no matter how impossible the odds. The legend of the girl from the insane world and her fearless companion spread through every corner of space. No one ever called Earth mad again.